It was one of the most complete games of the season. Might have possibly been the best game of the year for the Golden State Warriors. I'm going to find out if Kylen Mills agrees, plus some new information breaking from Anthony Slater that we're going to talk about regarding the Warriors and maybe pulling off a trade. Should be another fun show. This is Locked On Warriors. Oh, this is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Use the promo code Locked On. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and probably more at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRocho. Kylen, in my humble opinion, that game last night was the best game of the season for the Golden State Warriors. Without Steph Curry, Jordan Poole had, in my opinion, his best game of his entire career. Draymond Green echoed those sentiments as well. Klay Thompson was on fire. He's been on fire since 2023 started. What is your reaction to the game last night? And do you agree with my sentiments that really, despite beating the Celtics, Grizzlies, and a few other games, that was the best game of the year for the Warriors? What was your reaction and thoughts to all that?
Oh, all right. So it was definitely one of the best games of the year, for sure, for the Warriors. I'm trying to think, because I do think those Celtics and Grizzlies wins that you brought up were also really, really good. And just because of the quality of those teams, I don't know. So anyways, it's hard for me to say whether this was the best win, but it surely was one of the most complete performances we've seen from the Warriors all season. And especially to me, the most encouraging part is that Steph Curry was not playing. And, when we got the news that Steph Curry might be out for a couple of weeks, there still has not been a definitive timeline in regards to his injury and what the status is. And with tearing some ligaments, it's like a very strange injury. And it's funny because my mom was texting me like, what is this? What does this mean about Steph Curry? I'm like, really? He just had a really hard bruise. I mean, that's essentially it. And it hit his leg hard enough to where it did not break the bone. Your tibia and your fibula in your shin are really difficult to actually break, but it was a hard enough contact that it did, tear some of the membranes, maybe some of the soft tissue holding those two together. So it sounds really painful, but I think the good news is hopefully he'll be back, in a reasonable amount of time. But still, you hear that Steph Curry's out, approaching the All-Star break, approaching the most critical time of the season. And, that's just never good news. But to have the team come out and play the way they did last night without Steph Curry and be able to put together a complete performance, that was the most encouraging part to me, was that the Warriors were able to come together without Steph. Because this season with the inconsistencies, I mean, there have been so many times where Steph has just had to put the team on his back. And, we're all pulling our hair out on Twitter going, somebody help the man. But last night, they didn't need him. I mean, flat out, top to bottom, everyone played well. It's hard to pick out one person. I like the move. I don't know what you thought about this, Cyrus, but I like the move of Jonathan Kuminga with the starting lineup. I think Kuminga has been excellent. And, he didn't put up a lot of points last night, but still, I think his play has been coming along nicely. And that rim protection and defense he's been providing has been critical. Klay Thompson went off. I mean, I just think you can go up and down, and everyone did their part last night. And it was just great to see, especially in Steph Curry's absence, because the inconsistencies to me this season have relied a lot on the second unit, I think, especially the defense. I don't know. To me, basically, just Steph isn't the problem. So to have the team play well without Steph is very encouraging moving forward.
Incredibly encouraging. I thought the pool party having that performance, 21 points, 12 assists. I was shocked to learn that was not only his third double-double of his career, excuse me, but it was the first double-double of the season. That was just really eye-opening to me, because it shows me that Poole does need to work on other facets of his game.
Yeah.
And maybe he is, because of that performance last night, which was fantastic. Draymond Green pointed out as well that 3 of the 4 turnovers that Poole accumulated, because that was like the one stat that you could say was a negative, were because he was trying to force the ball to Klay Thompson at the end of the game. Klay was too shy of the all-time single game record of 14, which he owns. And so there was one point in the game late where the Thunder, I think, had 4 or 5 defenders on Clay because the Warriors were just trying to force it to him to see what he could do. And so those are 3 of Poole's 4 turnovers. He had a fantastic game. In regard to Stephen Curry, I want to actually defer to our good friend, Dr. Nirav Pandya, who's been on this show. Let's quickly hear his diagnosis of Steph's injury. One which, when I heard this, simply confirmed there's nothing to worry about, folks. And I'll explain more in just a minute. But here's the doctor explaining what happened specifically to Steph Curry.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Nirav Pandya. A lot of Golden State Warriors fans have questions about Stephen Curry's injury. What does the injury report mean? And what are the general return to timelines and treatment principles? Here's a quick breakdown. Now, the first important thing to understand is in that report, the Golden State Warriors describe a contusion to Stephen Curry's lower leg. Now, what a contusion is basically localized damage to soft tissue around a part of the body. This typically occurs from a direct blow. So if you take that into consideration with the video, potentially what happened is that Stephen Curry did have an impact right in this area of the fibula. Now, if you look at the anatomy of the knee, you've got your femur, you've got your tibia, and your fibula. The tibia and the fibula are the 2 major bones of the lower leg. If you have an impact in the region of the fibula, what can happen is that the ligaments that actually connect the fibula to the tibia can be damaged. This is the superior tib fib ligament that they were talking about. Now, what these ligaments do is actually help to connect the fibula to the tibia. If there's disruption of these ligaments from a blow, they can get injured. And this can be a microscopic tear, a partial tear, or a complete tear. Because there are multiple ligaments around this area and due to the anatomy of the actual fibula and tibia joint right over here, there usually is very rarely any degree of dislocation or subluxation in these injuries unless it's a very high mechanism injury. Now, you can imagine if those ligaments are injured and the fibula moves around, you can also damage the structures below this area, which is the interosseous membrane. That's a thick band of tissue that basically connects the tibia to the fibula. So if you get a blow over here, this bone potentially moves out of place, the ligaments basically get disrupted, and then that injury kind of goes down between these 2 bones over here, which is potentially what the injury mechanism actually was. It describes injuries to the tib fib ligaments, as well as to the interosseous membrane, as well as a contusion, which was basically a blow that potentially caused all this to happen. Now, the good news is for these injuries, the vast majority of them don't need surgery. The only real times that you need surgery for this kind of injury is that, number 1, if there's damage to other structures around here, whether that be the meniscus, or there be the lateral collateral ligament, or sometimes the nerve that runs around this area. Number 2 is the only other reason you need surgery is if there's actual instability of this joint after it's healed. So this can be subluxation, where this joint kind of comes partially out of place, or complete dislocation, where it just kind of keeps popping out of place. That's typically rare, and you typically see that more with very high energy mechanisms like a car accident. Now, in general, the treatment principles for this are basically getting that ligament to scar in so that that joint actually is stable, and then the interosseous membrane doesn't experience additional force as well too. If you think in general for soft tissue healing, that can sometimes be somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks, but every injury pattern is different. The Warriors medical staff, as well as how bad the injury was on MRI, as well as how he responds to treatment, will really determine how quickly he comes back. You're basically looking at pain and swelling control, you're looking at restoration of motion, restoration of strength, and the ability to get back on the court. Now, the good news is this seems like something that won't have any long-term lingering effects, and once those ligaments and structures heal, he should be back on the court for the Golden State Warriors. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Wow, he's what a professional. Long story short, to summarize, this is not a serious injury. Kylen, you played soccer in college and most of your life. You still play. You remind me of me 10 years ago because I was playing, basketball in similar style. Have you ever banged knees? Is that something that happens in soccer?
All the time. Yeah, all
Okay.
the time. And it's super painful. And that's why kind of my description of the injury was similar to what Dr. Pandya said, is that there are a lot of ligaments, both in your knee, as he mentioned, holding together the tibia and fibula, and, micro tears and things like that happen. Like, I banged my knee so hard on someone else's knee where, there were micro tears and more going on than just, some of the usual symptoms of a contusion. But it will heal. It will heal. It's not something, like you said, that should be a long-term concern for Steph Curry. And that's the best part. I mean, that's great news ultimately. I think best case scenario.
Absolutely. And the reason why I say that is because so many people seem to be concerned over that unusual injury report that the Warriors published, which listed tendons and other parts of the knee that I never heard of. Most people have never heard of, but these are just micro tears. The technology is so fine now. I was telling Rick Barry this on a show we did Sunday. We need subscribers there. Please subscribe to Rick Barry's house on YouTube. But I was explaining to him, like, Rick, if something like this happened to you in the 70s, those terms would not be showing up on your injury report. The doctor would have just said, okay, you bang knees, it's a bruise. Anyone who's played or has participated in athletics and has gone through something like that, it hurts like a bitch.
Yeah,
it really hurts. It can get sore. It can limit mobility. But 2 to 3 weeks, and in this case, the doctor said 4 to 6, which is, look, I'll listen to him. He's going to be fine, folks. I just wanted to play that and rest any concerns, any anxiety that people may have about Stephen Curry. He's going to be fine. But the question remains, what's a team going to do? And are the Warriors fine? And Kylen, you and I are going to talk about a new report that came out regarding the Warriors possibly being open to the idea of trading their youngsters. We're going to discuss that report and so much more after I give some love, or we give some love, to Built Bar. Have you tried a Built Bar yet, Kylen?
No, I'm still waiting
Okay.
for you to send me my box, Cyrus.
At this point, now that you're an employee, hopefully they'll just either, if they send me another boxes, they'll send me like a promo box every couple months. I'll just forward that to you. So because you have not tried one yet, you need to try them. Look, I'm going through. I'm finally getting healthy again. I'm losing weight, and Built Bars are a huge part of that, for the simple reason that anytime, and I've heard other people say this too, anytime I got like the late night munchies, which is the biggest culprit for gaining weight, you just eat a Built Bar. They only have on average, I believe, 130 calories per bar. Sugar, which is the worst thing you can put in your body. Built Bars only have on average 4 grams of sugar per bar. That's not a lot. Yet they pack a whopping 17 grams of protein. And they're also available in stores now. That's when you know a business is doing good, folks. When they start online and distribution accelerates, and all of a sudden you see them in Walmart. It's available in Sam's Club. You can buy 4-bar boxes at Walmart. You could buy a 13-bar box at Sam's Club. And of course, if you just want to order your own flavors, if you want to order a sample box, which is what I strongly recommend, so you know what it is you like, just go to Built.com. The Warriors ate their Built Bars last night. Don't quote me on that, but I'm positive they did. And you folks should too. They're yummy, delicious. Go check them out. Built.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. The NBA trade deadline is approaching, and Locked On has you covered. Thursday, February 9th, tune into Locked On NBA on YouTube at 2 Eastern Time, 11 our time if you're on the West Coast. Kylen Mills is hosting, and you can hear reaction from the trades that will change the rest of the NBA season, who becomes contenders, who is tanking for a better future. Subscribe to Locked On NBA on YouTube, and don't miss a deal. Kylen, do you have more information on that? I just learned today that I guess you just learned yesterday when they asked you. Do you have more information? Like, how can people check it out? What time? I guess 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Pacific. What other information is there that I may have missed?
Not a lot. I mean, just we're going to be covering all the trades across the league. I mean, the Locked On Network, I don't know if people realize from watching this program, is super expansive. I mean, we've got hosts that are credentialed media members in every city across the country, and, you know, hosts and co-hosts who are going to be coming on, basically weighing in. I'll be asking them questions, doing interviews, and basically just breaking down all the trade news that comes down the pipeline. So that'll be starting, like you said, around 11. And also Nick Angstad, the Locked On NBA's main host, he's the guy who basically oversees the whole thing. He'll be hosting as well a live stream. So we're going to have a lot of different ways that people can keep up with us. But I'll be interviewing all of the different hosts as the trades come down and we learn the news. And that'll be going on really from around 10 a.m. Pacific. We're going to start getting ready to go live to like maybe 2, 3 o'clock. I think the deadline is 1 o'clock Pacific, but who knows? There may be a backlog. Everything may happen last minute. So we'll just have to see, but super excited to see what shakes out. And like I said, I'll just be talking to, the hosts around the country who cover these teams. These are people who, know the teams well, and are going to be really explaining what these trades mean and how they're going to impact the league. Will the Warriors be involved, though? I know we're about to talk about that in a second, and I am very curious to see what happens.
Same. And before we get into that, much more pressing matters. Ro Brown writes, Kylen, have you watched the movie Friday yet? You've addressed this before, but clearly Ro missed that show.
So I did. Yes, I watched it. It was maybe a month or two ago. It happened to be on TV, and my husband and I were cracking up. I was like, all right, I got to watch. I at least got to wait for my neck, my back part, just so that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Andre Iguodala has a role in the film. I mean, you got to watch it. Just
my neck, my back, my neck and my back.
Oh man, it's talking about stealing a roster spot, Andre Iguodala. Congratulations, you have finagled a lot of money for doing nothing over the years. Kudos to you, sir. Anthony Slater. I'm not being that facetious saying that, by the way. Like, there was one season where he literally just stayed in the Bay Area as a member of the Memphis Grizzlies, and I think cashed $17 million in checks for the year. So again, kudos to Andre Iguodala. He knows how to get money for doing nothing. Anthony Slater, in a story published, I believe today, don't quote me on the date, it might have been last night, wrote that according to his sources, the Warriors have, quote, an increased willingness to engage in conversation and explore the idea of moving their younger out of the rotation players if a significant enough upgrade is offered, unquote. What does that mean? Probably not much, except that it does fuel the idea that the Warriors would trade Wiseman and Moody if the offer was right. Your thoughts on that report, Kylen?
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to say the least. If the Warriors were going to make a move, and I still am very skeptical that one will happen, it would be more of a fringe player being moved. They're not going to do anything major. I know, Cyrus, you brought up like, hey, if Draymond Green isn't coming back and isn't going to agree to that player extension or to that extra year, they should trade him, try to get something in return. Like, I don't think anything major like that's going to happen. But if they were going to trade someone or make some kind of move, it would be ancillary, and something like James Wiseman or Moses Moody would, I think, be the most likely and make the most sense, based on the fact that we've talked about this, Cyrus, that James Wiseman has oddly sat on the bench quite a bit lately. I know he just got some time, but still, like, he had several DMPs in a row. It raised some eyebrows. And, I think that we both kind of conjectured that, potentially the Warriors trying to rest him to prevent him from getting hurt so that he is a possible trade piece. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, to me, the report, whether it comes to fruition or not, I don't know, but I think the report makes sense. It adds up that the Warriors would at least be exploring some of those moves. And another thing I know that we were just talking about is, another report John Hollinger put out that the Warriors would save, and this is wild to me and kind of off a separate topic, but the Warriors would save $131 million if they traded Wiseman and didn't get anything in return. Like, what? I mean, the amount of money they're spending on James Wiseman to have him sit on the bench is pretty wild to me. Like, that is actually a little bit surprising. And until you see the number actually written out, it doesn't really hit you. But I'm like, man, $131 and Wiseman is getting DMPs. Like, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, I want to save that topic for just a moment because I want to still talk about the trades, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
And what I'm curious to know, Kylen, so last night Wiseman played 5 minutes of garbage time, and actually was fantastic in those 5 minutes. If you look at the stat line, and both him and Moody actually played. Moody played early in the game, but he also got a lot of minutes in garbage time as well. Both players were in the positive and plus minus. In fact, the only player that was not in the positive for the Warriors was Ty Jerome. Everyone else I thought played, even Jerome was fine. I mean, I don't know why the plus minus skewed like that, but I really want the Warriors to play Moody and Wiseman. Last night, Anthony Lamb did not see a minute of play, and the Warriors result, and the result was arguably, possibly one of the best nights of the season for them in terms of efficiency, just in terms of everything. And they didn't even have Stephen Curry. Moses Moody, I thought, had a great game. He played 11 minutes. He only scored 4 points, but he was a +9 in the plus minus, was fantastic defensively. He's a strong player who brings some size to this team. He shot 2 for 4 from the field. I want to see both these guys play. I've been saying this all season long. I don't see a need for the two-way players when you already have Wiseman, when you already have Moody. Do you think, in your opinion, that the Warriors should make a trade? Because I actually don't think I think they're fine if they just rely on the youngsters and just roll with them, right? As long as you mix them up with the vets, I think the Warriors are fine. What do you think?
The thing is, my issue is that I don't know that I can make that assessment of whether they're fine with the youngsters and if they roll with them and give them more time or not, because we haven't seen them play. And that to me is the hardest part about trying to, make a hard evaluation on the situation is like, yes, James Wiseman is ready, should the postseason come around and they need that big in the second unit, or they need a rim protector depending on, what kind of matchups they're up against, or should anything happen to Draymond Green or, Kevon Looney. Yes, he's ready. I can't make that evaluation because he hasn't been playing and he has not played enough minutes this entire season to make that kind of assessment. the thing I've been saying all season long is that I think they need to trade for a big and someone who is a rim protector, doesn't have to put in a lot of points and can even play sparingly. But I think coming into the season, the plan was for that to be James Wiseman. Is that still possible? I don't know because I haven't seen him play. And that's the hardest thing about this entire situation to me and trying to evaluate where the roster is at, is that I don't know that I can make a fair evaluation on James Wiseman. And
Yeah.
Moses Moody as well. To me, the lack of size is the biggest issue or concern that I would like to see addressed in a trade versus Moody having the potential to be maybe a 3-and-D player or just being a longer guard who can play defense. Okay, sure. But to me, the size factor is the biggest need. But it's very hard for me to say, hey, yeah, James Wiseman could step in or not because he hasn't played. And I'm on the same page as you, Cyrus, that I would have liked to see him play more. And,
Yeah.
I feel like it's a recurring theme on this program and amongst a lot of Warriors fans as well. It's just if they're not winning, why not let the young players play?
Yes.
And
Yes.
obviously up until this point in the season, they've been 500. So clearly I feel like I just feel like there have been some more opportunities where they could have played without affecting the scoreline or without, I'm not saying throw games for development, but at the same time, when you're losing anyway, I feel like there could have been more opportunities to get them in the game.
My
Um,
sentiments. Exactly.
if I were to make a move, it's funny because I retweeted something that Nick, as I was just mentioning, who oversees Locked On NBA, tweeted with a bunch of bigs who are kind of defenders, rebounders who might be available for the Mavs to go get. And I was like, I like this list for the Warriors. Like we've been talking about Jakob Poeltl on this program. He put on there Nerlens Noel. And now some of these are reaches. I don't think the Warriors maybe want to move the pieces in place to bring some of those guys in. But still, I'm like seeing those names to me is very tempting because I do think that size is an area that the Warriors could upgrade and bring someone in. I don't think it's going to happen. So just flat out saying that. But what I would like to see, that's the one area that I feel like could be a weakness. And it's hard for me to say one way or another on Wiseman because we haven't seen him play.
Absolutely.
Tough.
Absolutely. There is a player out there that I'm starting to really that is kind of sticking out from the rest of the pack in terms of who I would love for the Warriors to have. And I mentioned this on last night's show. I'll mention it again with you, Kylen, to get your reaction. And we're going to talk about that Wiseman salary figure and the logic behind Joe Lacob being willing to spend a ridiculous amount of money on James Wiseman, but won't pony up $7-8 million for a 15th roster spot. We'll talk about that and so much more. But there is a player out there though that I really would be ecstatic about if the Warriors got him. And I mentioned before, but regardless, I'll tease it for when we come back. First, got to give some love to PrizePicks. And they got the overlay. I got to get that real quick for the YouTube show. And PrizePicks is not something I could send you, Kylen. Have you you have to do this on your own, but have you tried it yet? Have you played? Are you still waiting?
But my husband has. So there's that.
How's he doing with it? How does he like it?
He liked it. He tried it out a couple weeks ago, though. I got to ask him. I don't remember what ended up happening. But I'm just not a big sports betting gambler. Like I work in sports. And I don't know. I choose to stay away from it. But it's great if you're a sports fan and want to have a little bit of extra juice on a game you're watching. I think it's fantastic. I think as a journalist, it's a little bit harder.
Well, some of us just love the juice, and and if you want the juice on any games, especially with individual players, and if you're here in California where we can't play with FanDuel, unfortunately, but you can play with PrizePicks, and the whole premise is picking 2 to 6 players and betting on over-unders of total points, assists, rebounds. If it's football, passing yards, rushing yards, there are so many stats to choose from. And the payouts can be huge. You can win up to 25 times the amount of money you put down. It's just fun. It's really fun. It's safe and fast withdrawals. You don't have to deal with sketchy wire services to get your money back. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 if you use the promo code Locked On. Deposit $100. They give you $100. That's a hell of a promo. And look, if you don't have $100, if you only want to play with, let's say, $20, they'll match that. Whatever you put in, they will match. Just you have to remember to use the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Kylen Mills. So I'm looking at the chat right now. Plumlee does not excite me. Jakob Poeltl does not excite me at all, even though like I'm hearing some rumblings that Jakob Poeltl could be on the market because of the fact that the Spurs made one of the most uninteresting trades in NBA history, acquiring Dwayne Desmond from the Miami Heat today. The why of that, I have no idea. I imagine it's because they're gonna move Poeltl and they need a body there. But no, Pete Tresso, you nailed it in terms of who I'm getting really excited about, and that's Jared Vanderbilt of the Utah
I love
Jazz.
Jared Vanderbilt.
I love him, and I decided to peruse like his stats a little more and just do a little research on him. Besides the fact that he's a physical specimen, he's 6'8", 214. So in terms of his physique, he's about the same size as JaMychal Green, right? Only I think he's better. And despite the fact that only plays 24 minutes a game, he's averaging 7.9 rebounds per game. Last season, he played almost the same amount, just a minute more per game, 25.4. And last year, he averaged 8.4 rebounds per game. A quarter of those are offensive rebounds. He's a solid shooter in terms of efficiency. He shoots over 50%. This year, he's at 55.6. He's a 33% three-point shooter, so he's not a liability from the beyond the arc, even though that's not necessarily what he's known for. But all in all, the report came out, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago that the Utah Jazz are looking for a pair of second-round picks. That's it. If that is the asking price, and you got to throw in a Ty Jerome or somebody to match salaries, please do it. Please, because I feel like he would be a salve. Your thoughts on Jared Vanderbilt and anyone else out there, Kylen, that you would love to have on the Warriors?
I like Vanderbilt. I think he's a good defender. I think he's a great defender. I think that's maybe the number one thing that appeals to me about him. And I know another player you've talked about is Alex Caruso, just because the Warriors do need defense. So I think if you're not looking at a backup center, which again is like my personal preference, I think finding someone who's a versatile defender is going to be the best asset they need, or the most useful asset right now. I like Jared Vanderbilt. I've liked his game since Kentucky. I think that he would be a good addition. I just can't believe what the asking price is. I think that's interesting. You just said 2 picks and that's it.
I mean, you probably have to throw in a player to match, but that's what the report said. And then when you look at Rory, I can't remember his last name, I'm sorry, but with the Wizards in that trade where he got sent to the Lakers, that was essentially what the Lakers gave up, was just 3 second-round picks. I don't understand the value there, but apparently teams are biting on that. And if Danny Ainge is okay with it, 2 second-rounders and just a player to match salaries, please. And you're right, Jared Vanderbilt is also a fantastic defender. I thought that was stating the obvious. I'm sorry for not mentioning that. And here's the best part. And the reason why I'm not mentioning centers, because I know you've thrown out Boogie Cousins. I would love Boogie. I love Dwight Howard. I love a few other names that are being mentioned here. Hassan Whiteside, Willie Cauley-Stein, who was already with the Warriors, wouldn't do much. JaVale McGee, who reportedly is on the trading block. I would love all these guys, but the reason why I don't mention them is because I don't think Steve Kerr wants a traditional center anymore. I think he's officially done with traditional bigs. And so I'm trying to be pragmatic in my hopes and dreams. And that's where I think, and I hope that maybe, what's his name? Jared Vanderbilt could come to the team, but yeah. Anyways, should we move on? Is there anything else we got to talk about? And Matisse Thybulle, by the way, Keelan Martin throws in there. I'm not a big Matisse Thybulle fan if you have to trade Moses Moody or James Wiseman for him, just for the simple reason he's a one-dimensional player. He gives you nothing offensively. And so if that's the kind of player you're going to get back, I don't think it's worth Moses Moody. I don't know. What do you think? Would you trade Moses Moody for Matisse Thybulle, Kylen?
I don't know. I mean, if the Warriors aren't going to play him, I say move Moody for, I don't want to say whoever, but let him go somewhere where he's going to play. I mean, that's the only reason why I feel more inclined to say move Moody for less and I'm not in love with Matisse Thybulle's game either, but I just don't get it why Steve Kerr won't play him. And my thing is just like, let him go somewhere where he can play, because I do see potential in Moses Moody. And I know a lot of Dub Nation has been, really down on him this season because of some of those sporadic minutes where he's maybe not performed well. But I think that with a longer leash and more playing time, he could still develop into being a great player. But if it's not going to happen here with the Golden State Warriors, then it is what it is, then move him to somewhere where he can develop. I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
So, yeah, I agree. And I do hope the Warriors make a move, but if they don't make a move, just please play these kids. Like they're not going to hurt your team. And I really wish I knew what was really going on between Kerr and these guys.
Can I ask you
Anything else? Yeah.
Can I throw a question to you?
Of course.
So
What,
if the Warriors don't make a move, and I'm going to toss this out to anyone in the chat, anyone watching, listening, whatever, I would love to hear your thoughts. But if the Warriors don't make a move, I mean, how realistic do you think it is that they repeat as champions? Do you really feel confident with the roster right now and the fact that they're a game or two above 500, that come the postseason, they could win a 7-game series against the Celtics, against the Grizzlies, against whoever, basically some of the best teams in the NBA? Where do you feel like the Warriors are at right now with the roster as is?
I just don't see a threat out there. I absolutely do think so. I'm not ready to proclaim it like I did last year back in August.
Yeah.
I give them, I would say, like 80% confident. And the biggest reason is there's no one else out there that I see as a really legitimate threat to this team. I think the core three, with the exception of Clay, who is on fire right now, and even Draymond Green's playing great, but I just don't think they have the urgency right now. I do agree with Ultimate Warriors, who writes Clippers look scary. I don't want to play the Clippers in the first round. That would not be cool. I would try to avoid that if possible, because you really don't know what you're going to get with them. Kawhi Leonard is one of the 2 or 3 players in the NBA who scares me. The question is whether or not we're going to see the old Kawhi or not. But yeah, I still think the Warriors absolutely can repeat as world champions. I really just believe that Kerr has to just find a healthier balance in terms of the starting lineup and in terms of the bench. For example, like this is clearly a conundrum when Stephen Curry is healthy again, right? And this injury timed out beautifully because the All-Star break's coming up. And when he coupled that with the not severe timeline of Steph's injury, he's only going to miss 5 or 6 games, right? But when he comes back after the All-Star break, you're going to have to make a decision on Jordan Poole again, because the other day, Kerr did not start him, moved him back to the bench for the first time in months, and Jordan Poole responded with 3 points. It was probably his worst game of the season. He starts last night. He's more engaged, filling in for Stephen Curry, and he pours in arguably his most efficient game of his career with 21 points and 12 assists. So I think you have to figure that out, the Jordan Poole conundrum, which is he's clearly much better as a starter, yet Steve Kerr is not set in stone and starting him, so he almost becomes a liability when he comes off the bench. So you got to figure that out. And Kerr just has to kind of loosen up a little bit, get a little more open-minded, which I feel like until this year he was, in terms of creativity, ingenuity, just not being afraid to mix and match until he finds that right elixir, that right recipe, that right mix. And he's not doing that this year. He's being very rigid with that starting 5. He moves Jordan Poole in there, but he takes Looney out. So you go like minuscule small, and I don't think that works either. Yeah, but I do think they'll repeat. I'm actually very confident in that, because I think they can beat Denver. They've already proven they can beat Memphis.
That was actually my next question I had for you. Is you mentioned the Clippers, which I think is fair, but the Nuggets don't scare you at all with the healthy.
Not as much. Only because of the history of the two teams, and I feel like and this is just my opinion, but I feel like the Warriors have a mental advantage over the Nuggets. They've proven time and time and again they can beat them. I know the Nuggets are deeper this year. The Bruce Brown pickup was actually huge. The rookie they have from Kansas is solid. But like Jamal Murray is not his old self. Michael Porter Jr. I think he's a good, not great player. I just think the Warriors have their number, and I don't think they're going to be intimidated or afraid. But they are a good team. I don't doubt that. I don't want to disrespect the Nuggets, but I think the Warriors can beat them. Kawhi Leonard has proven he could beat the Warriors. Kawhi Leonard is just a monster of a postseason player. And Ty Lue is a great coach. I think he's a little overrated, but he's still a great coach. So the Clippers, as weird as it sounds, are probably the one team that frightens me the most in the postseason right now. Why do you think so? What do you think? What are your thoughts on the Warriors and repeating as world champions?
I think that the Nuggets are much improved from last season, so they do give me a little bit of pause because I agree. I think that first round pickup was big, and Murray, even not being himself, I mean, he still put up 33 against the Warriors the other night. I think he's still an elite player. Aside from that, though, I'm not as worried about the West as I am of the East. Like, that's the thing. I feel like the West is just like a shit show this year. Sorry, excuse me. Like,
Yeah,
but
it is.
but
It
to
is.
me, the East is the much more competitive conference. When you look at, I think the Bucks are a little bit scary, and then the Celtics. But for some reason, the Warriors have the Celtics number when you look at the regular season matchups, which is kind of crazy. But outside of playing against the Warriors, I think the Celtics look and have all season looked, like one of, if not the best teams in the NBA. And then I also think the Bucks are solid. But I think the Warriors could get there. I don't know. I'm still, like you said, unlike last season, I was like, this is a championship team. I can't say that this season. And you have to keep in mind, by the numbers, if they were to win the NBA title, they would be the first team to ever do that based on their record
Yes.
where they're at right now. So, I
Yeah,
mean, it's
because
just
they're deep.
something to keep in mind that by the numbers, this would be like a miracle and an incredible feat that's never been done before. If there was a team to do it, though, I think the Warriors in this core three would be the team to do it. That just,
Yeah.
turns on this extra gear and turns into, almost a different team in the postseason. But they still have to play these regular season games, figure out winning on the road, and put themselves in a decent position. Good news is that the West is still wide open, so there's plenty of opportunity for that. But
Absolutely.
we'll
And the
see.
weird
But we'll
and
see. I don't feel as confident, like you said, as last season. They would have to pull off a lot of magic. A lot of things would have to go right. Everyone has to stay healthy, which I think is becoming a concern with the age of this group. So, I'm hoping for the best, but we'll see.
yeah. And before we go, the John Hollinger a tidbit, he writes
Yeah.
for The Athletic, a former executive with the Grizzlies, routinely utterly wrong about the Golden State Warriors. I don't think he thought the Warriors would even make the playoffs last year, or I forgot what his prediction was a year ago, but he misses the mark so much. I don't understand why he's where he is, whatever. So that's a side note. But John Hollinger for The Athletic, he's a phenomenal numbers guy, but it's just when it comes to predicting basketball games and basketball teams, he's not good at that. And I feel like that's kind of important. But he reported that the Golden State Warriors, if they traded James Wiseman, and I couldn't figure out if he was referring to this year or next year, but Wiseman, his contract pays him $9.6 million this year, $12.2 million next year, which is, by the way, already signed. So he's already guaranteed for next season, regardless. It would cost the Warriors, though. And I don't know if this is this year or next year, but James Wiseman cost the Warriors $131 million in salary and luxury tax penalties. 131 million. This is the same team that did not add a 15th player on the roster to save money. This is the same team that probably will not give their two-way players guaranteed deals to save money. But for some reason, Joe Lacob is okay spending $131 million. Can I get just $1 million of that, Joe? Please, can someone just give me one of these millions? Some people can use it. I could use it. Anyways, yeah. It makes no damn sense. Does it make sense to you? That's
It
weird.
makes no sense. None. I mean, I just think it's crazy that the dude's not playing. But that's about that's my only thoughts.
Well, Kylen, you'll be back with me on Friday, and then like I said, people can check you out hosting the Locked On NBA special trade show, which is Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Just go to Locked On NBA to check that out. Anything else we missed before we go? Are we good? Let's hope they do a trade. I do hope for a trade.
I know. I'm
I do.
excited. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be happy to see a trade go down. But
Yeah,
we'll
and
see.
if it's 2 second-round picks and Ty Jerome for Jared Vanderbilt, man, would that make my week. Otherwise, we'll be back at it tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kylen. Follow Kylen Mills on Twitter at Kylen Mills and Instagram and TikTok. Follow me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. This program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Later.